few days ago, the Toronto Police Association put this statement out. All 3 youth arrested were already out on bail for previous firearm offenses. As you can see here, said firearms in question, and they were, well, believe it or not, in a stolen vehicle that fled from police. How many chances do they get before someone else pays the price? I highly recommend, if you have Twitter, you follow the Toronto Police Association. They've called out Trudeau numerous times for his weak crime policies, and I can only assume they'll call out Carney if these things continue to happen. We have a clip of Kevin O'Leary here calling Trudeau an idiot, we already know that, and also going on about the trade war, saying it needs to simply end, which I also agree with.
This is, I don't know, we kind of knew this was going to happen, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Is this a tempest in a teapot?
You know, this policy actually was introduced by the previous administration in Canada, the idiot king, Justin Trudeau. It was bad policy then, and it's bad policy now. But Carney, the new prime minister, that Trudeau was thrown out after he impoverished 25% of the Canadian population, wiped out GDP, buried the country in debt because of one policy called Bill C-69, which doesn't allow development of any energy, anything at all. It's a no pipeline bill. So revenues collapsed in Canada during his 10-year reign. And now Carney has no income. There's no growth in income at all. So he's trying to find any way he can to make income. This is worth $7 billion to the Canadian economy. But obviously, it's not going to work out the way he planned. Now, he may be just testing it, but he doesn't have a lot of options because Canada's economy has been wiped out by the idiot king, and he's got to fix it. And so at the end of the day, this is just another aspect of the negotiation. But I will add one thing. The original vision of this, way back 7 months ago, was why don't we somehow combine these two economies, not sell the country, but Canada has all the raw resources, the unlimited nat gas, unlimited oil, unlimited rare earth, unlimited minerals, and the U.S. is the largest market. Yeah. So what are we, all idiots? Why do we have tariffs in either direction? There should be no tariffs whatsoever. Exactly. We should bulk up and then fight off the Chinese.
You know, obviously the Trump administration, Scott, Treasury Secretary.
Somebody might need to check up on that guy. That sounded a bit concerning.
Scott Bessent also has called out the new tax on digital services that Canada has levied, is going to levy on U.S. companies. Watch this.
Canada has this digital services tax, and several other countries do too. We disagree, and we think that they discriminate against U.S. companies. This was something from the Trudeau years, so we were hoping as a sign of goodwill that the new Carney administration would at least put a break on that during the trade talks. They seem not to have.
Real quick, how does that end?
Well, Carney's pragmatic. There's no question about that. He obviously tested the waters with this. He got a very vicious reaction from Trump. And now he's probably thinking it through the weekend, deciding what to do next, because he definitely wants to get a trade deal done and start to normalize relationships between Canada and the U.S. It's in both sides' benefit. But if this is going to be the sticking point, it's not worth fighting for this, because it is a tariff on tech companies the same way Europe did it. And the majority of tech that's used in Canada comes from the U.S. It always has. And so I don't think this is a winning strategy for Carney. But as I say, there's a lot of optimism around him because he is not the idiot king. He's a lot more pragmatic.
I don't know if he's pragmatic. This seems to be praise simply because we're coming off of such a low bar that was Trudeau. We also need to keep in mind that Trudeau asked Carney for help numerous times, and Carney helped him for about 4 to 5 years. Things didn't really get better with his help either, might I add, and now he's running the country. We also have Anita Anand with the CBC here, giving clarity on absolutely nothing.
We're going to talk about NATO and the trip to Europe in just a second, but I have to ask you about these latest developments between Canada and the United States, with Donald Trump saying he's ending all trade talks because he's unhappy with the digital services tax, which is coming into force next week. What do you make of this move? How is the federal government going to respond?
Well, our position remains that we will continue to act in the best interests of Canadians. We will be pushing and seeking at all turns to ensure that these unjustified tariffs are removed. And in particular, I will say that we won't be negotiating in public given the complexity of the negotiations, given the need to ensure that Canada's position is the strongest possible it can be.
Oh, the government hasn't really been public with much of anything in terms of the Canada-US trade war, and they aren't even in Parliament right now, so the only time we get to see them is during news segments like this. It sounds like we are getting less and less information as time goes on. They don't plan to tell us a single thing. And the reassuring message they keep giving has already been overused. The negotiations fell through, and you're going to continue to tell us that things are going to go well, that things are going to be great in the end?
We're about 12 days, I think, at this point into the 30-day timeline, and if the president is true to his word here that talks have ended, I mean, what is your immediate sense of the ability to keep moving ahead, to try to accomplish anything within the 30 days? The steel sector was here yesterday, worried about the job losses just rising at an exponential rate if this keeps going. Just what are your thoughts there on the ability to even keep moving forward right now?
Well, I'd first like to shout out the steel and aluminum industries in our country that are suffering under 50% unjustified tariffs. And we will continue to advocate and act in the best interests of all Canadian businesses, including the steel and aluminum industry. I will also say that supply management has been an important cornerstone of our economic policy, and that too is extremely important for industry, and in particular, the agriculture and the agri-food industry.
Not one word about steel coming in from China or jobs going over to China because things are cheaper there. My God, we literally just lost that BC Ferries contract, which probably would have used a lot of steel. It blows my mind how they were able to trick nearly 50% of the country into believing that all the issues they created just showed up in the past few months because Orange Man bad. Anyway, I digress.
So these are cornerstones of our negotiations. We have certain guiding principles. We're going to continue to push in the best interests of Canadians and Canadian businesses, and we will ensure that the best result is reached for our country. At the same time, we are ensuring that we diversify our supply chain so that we are never again 80% dependent on one particular economy.
Instead of being 80% dependent on the US, we'll become 80% dependent on the EU.
If you loved us, you would love us for our values. What we're seeing right now is a nation that doesn't believe in equity and inclusion or under the rule of law. Those are our values. That's why our Prime Minister, Carney, is over in Europe talking about our new future as being part of Europe and no longer part of the United States.
We're heading down a really strange path right now. Anyway, I'd like to know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, hit that sub button if you are new, and thank you very much for watching.